Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host. No, there's no co-host today. Co-host Mara. Today is co-host Mara. Why? Because Kaustubha's not feeling well, and he's doing interview day tomorrow. So we asked if I could do it without him today. Me and Mara are convinced the entire thing is going to fall apart without Kaustubha's stability, but we're going to try our best anyway. And welcome to Q&A Day. If you're listening to this on Facebook for the first time, welcome. This is our daily study of the cream of the crop, the pinnacle, the crown jewel, the crest jewel of all the Vedic teachings. Why? Because it teaches pure, loving devotion of the heart. So that is the deal. The Srimad Bhagavatam, out of the many, many Puranas, it is pushing us towards pure bhakti. And so we study this book, which is 18,000 verses. I'm not even sure if we've scratched it, but it's 18,000 verses of fantastic stories, mysticism. What did we say yesterday? Mountains from outer space. Yet, and as fantastic as that story, deep, life-changing, game-changing philosophy. And even though it's ancient, very relevant, incredibly relevant to me this year in crazy 2021. Mara, what's the consensus? Is 2021 crazier than 2020? 2020 was pretty crazy. They're sort of like running neck and neck.
Yeah, it's a tie, I think.
It's sort of a tie. Don't worry, 2023 will be normal.
2022, you're jumping ahead, probably.
Did I skip a year? I'm already in 2020. I'm trying to move ahead. So anyway, we also broadcast live on Zoom, which is very fun. It sounds like, well, what's the difference? It's just, I'd like to listen in my car on Apple Podcasts. You're right, you can binge listen on Apple Podcasts, and we encourage that. We also encourage you to write a review and tell your story on Apple Podcasts. But also, it's something about Zoom that's sort of fun. That's why we can. Truthfully, it makes the recording a little lousier because Zoom doesn't have the best recording facility if we were to just do it in a studio. But we like looking at each other and messaging each other and spying on each other's houses and, you know, the eye contact that comes with Zoom. So if you'd like to join Zoom, you can contact our executive producer, Mara, at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Are you ready, Mara, for Q&A Day? So this is Saturday. It's Q&A Day. It's the day people write in their questions, and we try our best to answer the questions. Otherwise, we're just sort of studying Monday through Friday, and then Sunday we usually do interview day. And we try not to take a vacation, but sometimes we have to for travel. Okay, Mara, how are you? Any other announcements before we go?
We do have a Bhakti recovery group meeting today at 9:30 a.m. Eastern.
Okay, so we also have this parallel mission of a Bhakti recovery group. It's very important for those who are in the recovery process, but don't want to leave this ambiguous idea of a higher power and nebulous concept, a cloud-like concept of, but they actually want to understand, well, what is a higher power? And this is the beauty about Vedic thought. I'm just going to interject this here on a little squirrel tangent. Higher power is light. Higher power is truth. Higher power is love. We get that. And it's even mentioned in all the Vedic teachings of India. But also, like the sunlight, like there's some sun coming in my window right now, that sunlight is coming from a sun globe. You're going to be on the receiving side of all my noises today, Mara. So give me some life. Give me some life. I'm looking at you.
Got it. Okay.
You got that good. So the sun globe is the actual, you can't have one without the other. You can't have the light without the globe. So understanding that theory, the Vedic teachings is, yes, God is light. And some of us grew up in a culture where God is a being, right? So in the Vedic thought, it says, yeah, God is actually both. It is that light, and it is the source of that light. And that's why in Bhakti, the heart goes out to the being, right? The being who has form, who has characteristics, who has pastimes. And then there's some people who just choose, no, I want to worship God in the form of light. That's okay too. And there's a way to explain that. In Bhakti, there has to be form because there's relationship. And we have relationship with, you can't say, well, I have a relationship with this enigmatic cloud-like being. Doesn't work in Bhakti, right? So we chant Krishna, we chant Ram. Huh?
You ready for some questions?
Oh, I understand what's going on. You're trying to drag me back. Okay. Did Kaustubha text message you? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah.
Kaustubha is watching, sending messages. Bring him back. He's off on a tangent. Hold his hand. Reel him in. Oh, Mara, what do we got?
All right. Well, a lot of our listeners.
By the way, I have the right to reject any question. I just putting that out there right now.
Okay, got it. A lot of our listeners received Bhagavatam sets this week that were donated from Bhadra for Name. And
you got to speak louder, I think. You're so soft-spoken, and I'm such a big mouth.
Okay. A lot of our listeners received Bhagavatam sets for Bhadra per Name. And so Liam Wilson wrote in and asked, he said, a set of Srimad Bhagavatam arrived for us today, and we're so grateful. I vaguely recall people discussing having them properly installed in people's houses. What would that entail? And is this necessary or recommended? Why or why not?
Well, I'm not so smart myself, but I have very smart friends. So what I do is I call, what did they call that game show? You call the lifeline?
Yeah, you have lifelines. It's like phone a friend is one of them.
Phone a friend.
Yeah.
So I texted Amarendra Prabhu, who's our resident pundit, and he said, the Bhagavatam is self-installed. It's like the Shalagram Shila. God is already present in it. You need not install it. But, you want to make sure it's a clean space, a place that's going to be, with Bhagavatam, we don't have our food or in a place that's it's going to be unclean. It's like sort of like an altar in one sense. It can almost be like an altar because the book Bhagavatam represents Krishna in one sense, but you need not do any official installation.
Okay.
There you go.
Good answer. Thank you.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, I like it. So our next person wrote in, this is Devaki from Berlin. She wrote in this question for you. She said, I've begun giving yoga classes to my classmates at uni, and I found it to be a wonderful opportunity for service. I made them meditate.
Is that a British thing? Uni?
Yeah.
Do we say that?
Or European.
Do we say
no,
that?
we don't say it. No.
We don't say that, right? Okay.
I made them meditate and say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and they loved it all. However, since they are all either atheists or agnostic, I couldn't share as much as I would have liked. For example, after saying the mantra, they asked its meaning, and I had to tiptoe around to not freak them out by mentioning God.
Yeah, don't say the G word.
So as a legendary yoga teacher, could you please tell me how you do things? How do you share yet not freak your students out? Can you recommend some mantras or meditations for me to implement that are simple, yet which can help them spiritually? Thank you for your support and guidance.
Well, me being the legendary yoga teacher that I am, I have a whole trunk load of information. Well, this is a good point because to become good at anything, a good teacher at anything, you have to know how much to give and how much to back off. Isn't that sort of true? Like even with sort of like math can be real boring. Or you could have a math teacher that just sort of makes it fun by the way they present. So teaching is an art in itself. And I've had martial arts teachers who were incredible at martial arts, but just couldn't teach. It's like a whole different thing. Same with music teachers. I've had music teachers that were shaming. And it's just like, I didn't even want to hear from this person. So the same is with yoga and teaching bhakti. And teaching is, first of all, we have to understand the philosophy well. And second of all, you have to know how much, and it sounds like she's there. She has to know how much to give the student without making the student sort of like recoil. You can't do nothing, right? For example, the Ayurvedic doctor has to give the proper herbs for the patient to heal. If they don't give anything, the patient doesn't heal. If they give too much of a particular type of herb, it might kill the patient, right? So the expert doctor also has to use the same theory. In the same way, when we're giving bhakti to somebody, we should understand first, everybody is looking for God. They might say, no, they're looking for a partner. I'm looking for a lover. I'm looking for a best friend. I'm looking for a new house. I'm looking for adventure. They're not. You should deeply understand, actually, everybody is looking for Krishna. And when I say Krishna, I say that in the broadest way. They're looking for God. They're looking to reconnect. All the other stuff won't mean anything. You can have adventure. You can have your soulmate. You can have, a child. You can have a nice home. It will still always end up a little empty. Why? Because we're spiritual beings and we're meant to have that relationship with our higher source. Then once you have that primary relationship, and this is why I tell, people who say, yeah, I'm looking for a spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend. I always say, first fall in love with Krishna. Make sure you're the next, boyfriend you have, make sure he's got ankle bells and a peacock feather in his hair and walks around with a flute up in his belt. All right. So that's my first thing. Anybody looking for a guy out there? That's your guy. If you're looking for a girl, that's your guy. Okay. Fall in love with Krishna first, and then everything else makes sense. Mara, what was the question? I just got squirreled
So
away.
how can
We call
she,
that chasing squirrels when I go on a tangent.
How can she bring this into her asana classes without freaking people out?
Gotcha. So the first thing is, we're convinced that everybody has this gaping hole, God-shaped hole in the heart. And when we know that, we can start being compassionate to people and seeing where they're at. And so some people, like in the university, what do you get a lot? You get a lot of people who are trained up in atheism, sometimes the university themselves, and they try to make that the normal. And you can't even mention God. It's like an what's the word? Anathema, where you just like repulsed. Anathema. Is that it? Anathema. No?
I'm not sure.
Well, say the word, Mara.
I don't know.
You don't know it. Funky's saying it's anathema.
Okay.
You're sort of like recoiling. You can't even say God anymore. It's like not even in the conversation. It's just like, no, what are you talking about? You shut that conversation down. So then I like to explain stuff like that. Hey, like, for example, if people say there is no higher power, how about the wind? You don't think the wind is a higher power? How about the sun? How about the rain? The rain is not higher. How about the ocean? Of course, there's higher powers. What kind of silly statement is that? We really have to be able to break it down in a way that's very digestible for them. And then when you say, if you now the chanting of mantras, it may seem sort of mystical and meditational. And so I think what she did by having them chant mantras, that affects the mind, whether they know it or not. And I think that's a great approach. Chant mantras. I actually like playing harmonium, keeping it super simple. Why? First of all, anyone can appreciate singing a song and chanting some mantras. Anybody can appreciate that. And truthfully, some people can't. But for the most part, people are like, all right, cool. A cultural song. That's nice. But what they don't realize is it's affecting the consciousness and it's making them open to hearing, because the mantras are not ordinary. They're quite extraordinary, and they start to change the consciousness. And just like if I'm looking at a clock, it doesn't seem like it's even the hands of a clock, those old fashioned clocks, it doesn't seem like they're moving, but they're moving. And in the same way, the mantras may not appear, well, I just chanted a mantra. It's having an effect on the consciousness. So engaging people in chanting is sort of like giving them paradigm shifts they're not even realizing are happening. And I know some of you guys out there that listen to the show, sometimes you even write in like, I'm not into Krishna at all, but yeah, right. I'm talking about. I just want to clarify this. I'm not really into Krishna.
But I do listen every day.
But I do listen every day, and it's become like part of their like unspoken path. But they don't want to like. There's a reasonable. There's some maybe fear of commitment. I get that. There's fear of commitment. A lot of things we do, we've been betrayed in a lot of ways, and by a lot of people. Maybe religion itself, etc. Spiritual traditions. Our parents, whatever. But it's working them sometimes for decades until everything just clicks in place. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've like been around it for 10 years, 20 years, and finally you're like, you're right. This is right. This is, you have that, like a gong goes off and you're like, yes. What? And you know what? 15 years ago, it wouldn't have made sense. You had too many material desires or too many things where you were wrapped up in too many things, but we get to it by Krishna's mercy. It's just like a persimmon. You pick that persimmon too early, it's the most disgusting food you'll ever eat. If you pick it even a week early, it's a little sweet and a little astringent. You pick it when it's ripe, oh my God, it's the best fruit you could ever eat. Do you ever eat persimmon, Mara?
Yeah.
They're great. It's like the best food ever. So the same is true with bhakti and our spiritual journey. You could hear the same truth we're speaking today 20 years ago, and you're like, no, Raghu, sounds foreign. And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, after you've been through a heartbreak, or after you have material success, or after you've had lots of money and someone stole it and you're betrayed, then you hear something like these heavy truths of the Bhagavatam, and it's like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah. You know what else might be helpful for Devaki that you have said like so many times in your kirtan and yoga classes, Raghu, is like rather than explaining the literal Sanskrit translation, you say like, does anyone need to call some light into their life? That's a really good one. You're not saying like, is anybody calling God in the form of a, blue cowherd boy? You're just saying like, does anybody need some light in their life?
Yeah, that's usually not my opening gambit. Anyone need a blue transcendental cowherd boy in their life today? It's usually, yeah. I say we're going to chant some mantras. Mantras are powerful sound vibrations. They affect our mind. That's what the word mantra means. Mantra. It delivers my man. And they bring some light into your life. Anybody needs some light in their life today? It's like a very simple way to, and very bona fide way to sort of explain it without giving great detail. And you got to think in a yoga class, especially, you got about like 5 minutes before they're like, man, come on, this is my lunch break. I really got to sweat. You don't want to let the whole thing drag on for 20 minutes. You want to get them in, and you got to know how much medicine to give without killing them, but you got to give something or else they don't heal. Let's stop there. Good job, Devaki.
All right. Your next question comes from Tom. He wrote to us, first off, thank you so much to Raghu and Kaustubha for your wonderful service. That is the Wisdom of the Sages podcast.
Sorry, Mara, you got overlooked there.
He actually said my name. I just didn't want to say it. I got it out. To be able to start every morning with the association of all of you is a true blessing. I have a question about the month of Kartik. I heard you mention that the service you do and the rounds you chant during this auspicious month is multiplied by 1,000.
Yeah.
Does this also
what do we
mean
call that again? Like double coupon day?
Triple coupon day. Does this also mean that if you were to make an offense during Kartik, that it would be negatively multiplied 1,000 times as well? Just curious. Thanks again for all you do, and I look forward to continuing this wonderful journey through the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Good question. 1,000 times multiplied for your devotional offerings in the month of Kartik, not 1,000 times the offenses. If or one times like the inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate behavior is never good, especially when it's conscious. Like when we have a plan, like, okay, let's go out and party tonight, and then get a little screwed up and go out. No, that's a problem when we're consciously making a plan to do something in our heart of hearts that we know is wrong. That's a problem, and you get serious. Not serious, you just get the effect of it. You get the effect of it. At the same time, sometimes we stumble on our spiritual path and we fall from our spiritual path, but it's not a plan. It's just like we were in a bad place at a bad time with a bad person and everything fell apart. So that's a problem. That's a problem, but it's not as bad as a scheme, a deliberate scheme to like break your vows or break your tradition or break your internal ethics. You can't really even follow ethical codes unless you like deeply imbibe why you're doing it. Just saying thou shalt not is not good enough. It might hold you there for a moment, but you have to really deeply understand like this is a crime against me. What do you think of that, Mara?
That's good.
Right?
Crimes
Right?
against you, yeah.
Crime against me. Yeah. And I'm willingly choosing to punish myself. Right? It's just like if I'm in the supermarket and there's, had to go to the pharmacy for something yesterday, and there was like all this like junk food candy stuff. And my little kid was like, I want that, I want that, I want that. And I'm thinking to myself, should I just buy him that? No, he's gonna have to pay. He's gonna have to pay for that. Meaning, once he consumes it, it's gonna affect him. And as a father, I'm deliberate. And I was thinking, well, maybe I should eat some of that. And I was thinking, no, I'm gonna pay for that immediately. No, I don't want to willingly do these things. There's always some effect, even if you screw up by mistake. But when you consciously do it, there's even more of a problem. Okay. Flying through these questions. I hope these are good.
Yeah.
How come they're going so fast today? Either I'm not that bright or I'm a genius. I can't figure it. Oh, let's wait a second. I just want to share that Bunky's been a loyal brahmachari servant of mine for the last, God knows how long, 6 months. And he's become like a family member. And I'm sending him off on his own tomorrow to Uncle Tukaram in Long Beach, California. And the whole East Coast is going to miss him. So I'm going to invite Bunky on to ask a personal question. Is that okay, Mara?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, Bunk, come on. He's rejoining us in Colombia. So if you haven't met him and you want to come to Colombia, we got to share the mic though, Bunky. Get your pretty face in here. Okay. Can I preempt Bunky? So Bunky, he was a yoga student. And then, but I never knew his whole past. He was a drag queen. Now it's different. I'm finding out and corrected. A drag queen is different than a transvestite. This has been because sometimes I go, get your transvestite butt over here. And he's like, I'm not a transvestite, I'm a drag queen. It's much different. Explain the difference. This is the first thing we have to do. Explain the difference. So people don't get caught up in the same wrong statements here.
A transvestite is it's a fetish.
It's a fetish.
Yeah. It's like something people do for some kind of pleasure.
All right. So what's a drag queen?
A drag queen is a performer, an entertainer. And that's not to say that some drag queens aren't transvestites. It's to say that most people who are transvestites are like, they do it like behind closed doors for fun.
All right.
Whatever fun they do it for, I don't know.
See, this was never explained to me during the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So thank you, Prabhu, for clarifying this. And to see him on his spiritual path, his mental, emotional transformation has like been very inspiring. But he said, Bunky was saying like, it's all the beautiful outfits we wear and the singing. He's an incredible singer too. It sort of like drew him into the Bhakti culture. Okay, Prabhu, I'm a mic hog, so please jump in and ask your question. Go right here. Put your face right here. The first one.
The first one?
Yeah, we can do first and third.
Okay. So it's
close.
Oh God. So my question is, what if we're being tricked?
I love this question.
What if Krishna, I'm trying not to be offensive, but it's going to be offensive. What if Krishna is actually some kind of like extraterrestrial, some really advanced extraterrestrial that's just like trying to draw us to him and use our souls for whatever reason he wants to? Or does this make sense?
Listen, okay, I'm gonna stop you right there, sir. Sit down, you offensive drag queen. No, that's actually a great question. And truthfully, my brain goes to places like this too. I just want to acknowledge that people are gonna have questions like this. Like, how do you know you're just not worship? People say all the time, how do you know it's just not a false god, some false god or some demon or some little devil or some little, how do you know? That doesn't sound like God with a bunch of girlfriends dancing, stealing butter, etc. These are great questions. And I feel like everybody has to ask these questions, even though it might seem offensive. That wasn't offensive. It's a question. And we have to ask these questions because we're going to be challenged in our faith. If you have to control your senses, control your mind, control your habits, control your thoughts, control your recreation, control your work, control your resources, you're going to want to definitively believe in this stuff. So you have to challenge every facet of your doubt. Every piece of your doubt has to be challenged, and it's got to be substantially answered. So let those questions rise. That's the first thing. The second thing is, great question. Here's my answer. We don't know that, but the fruit falls close to the tree. We have a pear tree in our backyard. And if you didn't know it was a pear tree, but you came around now, there's no leaves on the tree. There's no pears on the tree, but there's a bunch of pears on the ground. I can conjecture that I'm sitting under a pear tree. Does that make sense? There are great souls who've walked the path before Mara walked the path before I walked the path. Then there's sort of like Mara and me. We have a relationship, and Mara sees Raghu walk in this path. And then I see people who walked it a little longer than me. And this goes on. And then we hear about the lives of great acharyas, great saints, great people who've walked ahead of us. And they can tell us what it's like on the path. And then you start to notice, what are they like on the path? Like, who are these people telling us this stuff? How do they live? What are they like? And what I found in my life was I started falling in love, not with a book, but with people who have transformed their life, people who've had a past. And I've seen, wow, that is attractive. I want that. Is that accessible to me? And that's another beautiful thing I love about this entire spiritual system. Is not like, okay, there's God up there, or there's Jesus up there, or there's a prophet up there, there's Saint whomever up there, and here's you lowly plebeian dirtbag. It's not like that. It is, you have the opportunity to climb that ladder too. And all you have to do is climb it. It's up to you. It's not up to the ladder. It's not up to the prophet. It's not up to the holy books. It's up to you to choosing, I'm going to climb the ladder today. And then you can experience what it's like on rung 3 of the ladder, rung 9 of the ladder, rung 15. I can definitely see myself at this different vantage point of life. Now, this is I'm a different person than when I was 22. I was still practicing that spiritual life, but it's changed me. I've seen it change me. I can vouch for it. My conviction is deeper because I've witnessed it all around me. And I have, I think sometimes I'd ask this question when I was a young devotee. I'd say, now that you've been practicing for 15 years, do you have more faith or less faith? Are you just doing this out of ritual? I can honestly say in my life, my faith deepens as I apply it to my life. Every year, I feel like it deepens in me because it's becoming more real. How's that, Bunky? What do you think? Good. Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to put you on hold. We're going to bring you back for your next question. Okay. He's got 2 questions today.
Okay.
Bunky, we're going to miss this guy.
We're going to miss Bunky. I love Bunky.
We said that about you today. Me and Mara were writing each other. She said, I'm going to miss Bunky. I was going to miss him too.
Yeah. All right. Our next question comes from Sweet Man Simon from Nashville.
Sweet Man Simon.
He's reading the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and he said, and in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, speaking of Sri Chaitanya as a youth, it stated that if he found a small child in any house, he would tease him to tears. But when he was observed, he fled. Another says, my son is very young. Nimai puts water in his ears and makes him weep miserably. He steals our clothes and uses awfully abusive language with us. When we try to correct his speech, he splashes water on us and starts quarreling. It is then stated, everything your son Nimai does is exactly what Nanda Maharaj's son Gopal Krishna did a long time ago. I know Krishna stole the gopis' clothes, but what of this teasing? I have not encountered Krishna Leela in the same vein. Please expose me to it and explain. How does this cause me to endear Krishna?
Good question. Yeah, what kind of God would tease little babies, right? The interesting thing, first of all, if you've had a toddler or a little child, their naughtiness makes you fall more in love with them. Like one time when I was in India, I got this photograph texted to me from my ex-wife, and she it's hard to say ex-wife, but she said, yeah, I was looking around, I couldn't find the baby, and he was a toddler, so I got really nervous, and he wasn't around, I didn't hear him, and then she found this, and like sure enough, he was 1.5. He's in the toilet. He's in the toilet, like bathing in the toilet. And he knew he wasn't supposed to bathe in the toilet, but it was just something naughty about it. And when you don't hear a child, they're doing something naughty. That's just every mother, sort of father know that. So the picture was adorable because he's in that toilet. I'm going to frame that photo. But the idea is that kids know naughty. And it endears the parent to the child even more. Like that's the most charming picture ever. So in the same way Lord Chaitanya was naughty, everybody fell in love with him deeper. And so those pastimes of Gopal, of young Krishna, it was similar. All of his, and we were saying this yesterday on Sweet Baby Krishna, that, when there's two little kids, I told this story the other day, remember the story about Sue Ann Feener, the girl that kicked me? The girl that told me, kindergarten, she said, I love you. She said, I love you. And what was my response, Mara?
You
don't listen to anything I say, do you?
Sorry, Prabhu.
I kicked her. Thank you, Bucky. I kicked her and said, shut up.
So
but that was my way of saying, I love you too, and sometimes little kids react like that. They don't know how to express feelings. So they kick or they tease or they steal. And that it becomes endearing. Like she became my official kindergarten girlfriend after that, after I kicked her and said, shut up. I guess maybe I'm abusive. But anyway, my point is sometimes in that sort of awkwardness, there's like in that playing teasingness. So you have Krishna, we were telling the story yesterday, the Don Kali Leela, where Krishna is so funny. He goes into, he has like trunk loads of disguises. He's dressing up as a boatman. He's dressing up as a tax collector. He's dressing up as a girl and another gopi, and in these disguises, he's always trying to trick Radha. And Radha's like falling for it. And then he's getting found out, and then they fall deeper in love. There's one of Surya when he's at Surya Kund, because Radha worships Surya, the sun god. But if you think why, someone might argue, well, why does Radha worship sun god if Krishna is her everything? Because she worships the sun god, so because the sun gives health. So she's always praying for the health of Lord Krishna and the well-being of Lord Krishna. So he goes and worships Surya at Surya Kund, which is near Radha Kund. And Krishna is disguised as the pujari. And so he always like makes her say all these very vulnerable things about Krishna and how much she loves Krishna. And she goes, oh, really? Very nice to hear you. You must give you should maybe donate some butter to the sun god. The sun god will appreciate all the butter you give. And so it's just like one teasy pastime after another. And then he gets found out, of course. And then it makes the love and the sweetness accelerate. So in the material world, it's never like as pure, but it's like sort of a reflection of what we're getting with Krishna. Of course, Krishna steals the butter. He stole the cowherd girls' clothes. They were bathing. Not a nice thing. The girls had nothing, no clothes. They were bathing in the river, and he took all their clothes. And he even said, I'll give you the clothes back. You want the clothes? I'll give you the clothes. Just come get them. And Krishna's sitting in a tree with all their saris hanging over a rope or hanging over the branches. And, it's these stories again. I mean, if you were to just tell this story, it sounds like a weird, peculiar, almost perverse type of story. It's not at all. When we approach Krishna, we have to approach with nothing. No ego. We can't be wearing any costumes, any clothes. We're approaching just with our open heart. And Krishna, to allow us in his arms, he wants the real you. He wants the authentic you. He wants the genuine you. No more pretense. Strip it all down and then approach Krishna. Why doesn't he, and we were saying this last night during Sweet Baby Krishna, why doesn't he just embrace everybody? He does. Krishna loves everybody. He's cool. He gives you what you want. You have to play out sometimes your karma. But when he gives PDS, that's our new acronym, pure devotional service, that is Sudurlabha. That is rarely achieved. Why? Once you get pure devotional service, you own Krishna, right? Like Krishna is the chariot driver. That's a very a lowly position. You know what I mean? It's like if I had this, I'm here with all the executives of Google and this guy who drives for Uber over here. It's not considered such a big position to be a driver. But Krishna played that position of the Uber driver for Arjuna. Why? Because he'll do whatever Arjuna wants. All Arjuna has to think of something and Krishna will do it. Because Krishna is chasing the bhakta. What do you need? What can I get you? How can I serve you? That's what Krishna is doing. He is so eager to please his devotee. It's such a sweet relationship. I lost my train of thought. Did that answer the question? What was the question?
About the naughtiness of Chaitanya Leela and Krishna Leela. I think you answered it.
Okay.
Is it okay if I ask the seal meat one? Is that a yes? Is that okay?
Sure. You want to ask a question about seal meat? Let it rip.
All right. This is from John in Durham. He says, I'm an other. I download this podcast on Spotify. I've listened to the first 150 or so episodes and occasionally check in on a present day class just to find out what's going on.
I love others. They're so mysterious. They're out there floating around.
He said, recently I read the wonderful book Arctic Dreams by Barry Lopez. One essay describes the life of an Inuit family whose diet consists almost entirely of meat and fish. Animal bodies also provide clothing, shelter, tools for hunting and fishing, even articles decorated and invested with religious meaning. I wonder if the concept of ahimsa can be adjusted or broadened to allow for the survival of such a community. Can a dinner of seal meat be served to one's family with bhakti? Thank you so much. I really enjoy the show.
Good question, don't you think?
Yeah.
Controversial, and here comes my controversial answer. There's definitely issues with consuming sentient beings. It's definitely bad karma to be in a place where that's all there is. But I think it's safe to say that it's a difference between, say, a slaughterhouse, if you've ever seen photographs, videos of a slaughterhouse, than the way, say, Native Americans would hunt. Are they still killing? Yeah, they're killing. But how are they doing it is a little bit different. It's done with prayer. It's done with, we're going to use every part of this animal's being. We're going to use the brain to tan the hides. We're going to use the hide to warm the children. We're going to use the, I don't know what they do, intestines to make balloons. I'm not quite sure what they use, but whatever. Sorry about that. Hell no. But the idea is, it's not just like a slaughterhouse where there is, unconscionable activities, things you can't live with if you were just to witness it, like what is going on, the degrading, being de-beingness. Like you have to suck the life out. You just have to see this thing as a commodity, as a thing, and not a being. And there's nothing wonderful about that. It's like hell on earth for the animals. It's hell on earth for the butcher, actually. To do that job is like hell on earth. So there's something to be said about some conscious killing, especially if there's nothing else. And I think there are gradations, and I do believe God is merciful. God is understanding, but there's definitely some bad karma. And guess what? We're all living in a place of bad karma. It's like your water table's contaminated, people. If you're drinking out of the faucet in New York City, your water table's contaminated. We can't live that pure. Christian Das is down there trying his best. He's in Costa Rica, just eating fruit, living down there. But he's one of our regular Zoomers. But for everybody to like pick up where they're living and just live in the forest, good luck. But we can't escape the toxins of this world. We're living in a world where you can have the most beautiful organic garden, and then the township says, you know what, we're going to frack through your property. We're going to frack on your neighbor's property, and that's going to affect your water table. So it's hard. What I feel in my own life, we got to do the best we can. We got to do the best we can, and we got to stay connected with Krishna, and Krishna will carry what we lack and preserve what we have. We try our best to minimize violence, but you're going to cause violence. For Mara to come over here the other night with me and Bunky to read the 10th canto for Sweet Baby Krishna, she might have hit a squirrel, or she might have hit some bugs, and depending on her consciousness, if her consciousness was like, yeah, I'm coming over for food, you know what I mean? If that was her well, if it's prasadam, it's okay. But if she's coming over for any other motive, then I'm here to serve Krishna and to serve the devotees. There always is karma with that. Once you're living in a world where everything you're focusing on is, how can I serve? How can I take care of the devotees? How can I serve God? Karma becomes sort of a karma. There's no karma in that karma. It's called no reaction in action. And we may not be there yet. Mara might be coming over and saying, I'm a little lonely, I want to hang with those guys. Or I want to come over because I'm just hungry. But I love Krishna too. It's mixed. That's okay. We're in a process of refining ourselves to pure devotional service, PDS. And on that way, we're going to minimize our violence as much as we can. But we should understand we're all in Kali Yuga. We're all in a position of sort of bad karma. I mean, what do I feed my dog? I feed my dog meat. You know what I mean? And unless you get the expensive dog food, which I do, but unless you get you're getting like the remnants from all these factory farms. But who's to say the goose that was killed for my dog's like gourmet grainless dog food, wasn't mistreated? I don't know the backstory of it all. So we're living in a very compromised time. We try our best to uncompromise ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Was it good? Okay. Let's bring Bunky in for a second question.
Great.
He's leaving. We got to give some Bunky love today.
Extra Bunky love.
Let's chant the Maha Mantra for Kaustubha feeling better for tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. Come in, Prabhu.
I would like to know if you could kind of go back and reconfigure your devotee / brahmachari training and reconfigure it in a more streamlined way. What would you do?
How would we do our life differently, Mara? As a brahmachari, how would I redo brahmachari life? I think when me and Kaustubha got into ashram life, and maybe some people have been doing bhakti for a while, like I see Shamanandini here, and people have lived in ashrams. There's some like really wonderful experiences I've had in ashram, and there's some I wish I could sort of like, what is that? Apple X, Command X, like just select and delete it and redo it, undo. I think I would have been a little bit more focused on personal education on spiritual practices if I was to do it over. Like, for example, while Bunky's here, like living with me, I said, start studying Bhakti Shastri, which is diving deep into studying sacred literature. And so he's doing it. Why? Because it's harder to do when you have a job. When your only job is seva, then you should be studying sacred literature. So I think, I mean, I got to do this, and me and Kaustubha talk about how we used to just go to India and study. I probably would have done it more. I probably would have got more into like Vedic arts more, because it's harder to do it when you have kids. It's harder to do it when you have a family. It's harder to do it when you have a job. So yeah, but you know what? We got what we got. We got what we got. And I would be a little bit more, and this sounds maybe contrived, but a little bit more goal oriented. Like, okay, here's the cap. You're going to be a brahmachari for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years. Figure out a timeline. Me and Kaustubha was like, we're going to be a brahmachari for whenever, you know, like it was like an arrow with a timeline with an arrow. We're like, we did whenever until we break, I guess, or until we take sannyas. We're just going to keep going, you know. And so I think Kaustubha was a brahmachari for like 12 years. I was a brahmachari for 6.5 years. Lived in an ashram for like 7.5 years. But there was no plan. I think it's better to have a plan. How was that, Prabhu? Is that a good answer for you? Did you want more? He seems unsatisfied. I thought he'd be like, thank you, Prabhu. You're so wise.
Did he have another question still too?
Nothing more specific than making some explicit goals?
You said goals? You said wisdom literature?
Yeah, immerse yourself. I said Vedic arts. I would train Vedic arts. Like if you're playing harmonium, how do you play the harmonium correctly? You know, how do you play the mridanga correctly? You know what I mean? How do you study Sanskrit correctly? How do you like memorizing shlokas? I would, you know, we used to just sit there and memorize shlokas. That was one great thing about my brahmachari life. Every day we'd chant a chapter of the Gita, the same chapter until we had it memorized. Then we'd go on to the next chapter. Just stuff you don't have time to do when you're wrapped up in the material world, unless you're really disciplined, which is why I'm always riding Mara, studying shlokas, and she fights me. She fights me. Mara, Bunky's saying, what do you feel you would have extracted if I did those things? Oh, what would I have taken out?
Oh, that's a good question.
What would I have taken out? You know, truthfully, in brahmachari life, there is no regrets. I just think there's ways to be more effective. It's all service. So nothing is lost. You're like fully engaged in service. And there's also a thing about your time of your life where you're a little immature. You know, it was 22 to like 28 or 29. And so there's times of your life where you're like, man, I wish I was a little bit more understanding. I wish I was a little bit more broad-minded. But some of that you can't change, because you have to go through a period of, just to separate yourself from the material world, you have to go through a period of like almost separating us versus them. It's like a fanatical period that you go through, and then you have to mature out of it. And teenagers do that, or they have to find almost like a boogeyman to say it's us versus them. And then they grow out of that and they become a little bit more inclusive and understanding. Truthfully, I probably would have been a little cooler with my family. I was just like, you're not my family. We don't even know each other. We just came together for a moment. I would have been a little bit more understanding, but who knows? Maybe that's what I needed to. I needed to somehow separate myself from old relationships so I could recreate those relationships on my terms. You know, does that make sense? All right. Bunky seems unsatisfied with that answer, but we're going to let it go. How are we doing, Mayor?
We got 5 minutes left.
All right. What you got for me? Give me something good. Give me something good.
Our next
Hey, we
question
want to
is
make
from-
our announcement. If you're listening to this on Patreon, no, not Patreon. If you're listening to this on Facebook, we are doing a Wisdom of the Sages retreat on January 13th. You get to hang out with me, Kaustubha, Mara. It's cheap. How much is it? $1,200.
$1,200.
And airfare is damn cheap right now. So you can join us. It's in Cali, Colombia. Great way, especially if you're like an East Coaster like me. Get the hell out of Dodge and get down to Cali, Colombia. And we have like fun little excursions, but we also study sacred literature. And it's just a good quality people down there. So if you're thinking about a little breakaway, or you got someone you want to, if you got like a spouse, you want to say, I surprise, you're happy, Merry Christmas, we're going to Cali, Colombia. I know Elizabeth's thinking like that right now to Daniel, like, oh, I'm going to surprise him with a trip to Cali, Colombia. Some of our Zoom love couples surprise you. Or suppose you have lots of resources, but you can't go. There's a lot of people that want to go that just don't have any resources. If you'd like to sponsor somebody, reach out to us, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Some people want to do something good for somebody. They have the resources. They just don't know what to do. These trips are really game changing because the potency of the association of people very focused, it just changes the way you look at life, you know? All right. So anyway, reach out to us at that email address. Okay, Mara, what else do you got for us?
All right. Our next question comes from Kristen Gilmore. It's not really a philosophy question, but more of a Tulsi Mala care question, since I can't really find solid answers anywhere. First, the Tulsi Mala I bought has some cracks in some of the beads, or basically split open a bit. But some
Tulsi Malas are the chanting, like Indian rosary beads, for those who don't know. Sorry.
Is this normal? Will they break in half after some time? Second, I heard some people soak their mala or kanti mala in ghee or oil to strengthen it or give a rich brown color. Wouldn't this cause the wood to grow mold, especially with ghee, or go rancid in heat?
Good question. Well, you know, if you have a wooden table. Hi, I'm Raghunath for Tulsi Mala Care. This is my newest podcast. Well, like you have any type of wood, you have to oil your wood. That's part of having wood, because wood cracks. As it's like weather conditions. You know, I used to play the violin, so you know the humidity affects the sound, or like a harmonium. Humidity affects the sound. The dryness of where you live affects the sound. Why? Because it's affecting the wood. It's making the wood. If you have a wooden floor, sometimes the wooden floor will buckle if there's moisture in the floor. If you live in we live in a very humid place in upstate New York. So the summer is very humid, right? And the winter dries out. You know, we have the wood burning stove on, it dries out. The same if you live in Arizona, it's going to be different as well. So it's nice to soak beads in mustard oil. That's what they use in India. Some people soak in ghee. All things get moldy if it's humid. That's just part of humidity. And beads do crack sometimes, especially if you don't soak them. If they do crack, you can just chant where that bead went. And you can you could get them restrung as well too. If you really like your malas, if they're very special to you, find someone going to India or find a bead person in America and restring them. I've had good beads restrung before too. How's that? That's all I'm giving today.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Good answer.
Did Monkey have any more questions, or? No,
he's dry.
Okay, I think that's our time, Raghu.
That's our time. Oh man.
Yeah, I went fast.
Well, that's sad. Let me see if I can cue up my song. All right. We did pretty good. Kaustubha would be proud.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining us. I'll join you back on Monday. Kaustubha's doing this great interview tomorrow with Dhriti Devi, who's an incredible artist. YouTube, Google search her. And Mara, can you pull up that? Let me see if I can do it. I did a TEDx talk, and I just want to promote it right now. And part of my promoting is watch it on YouTube, comment it, and like it, because that somehow helps the algorithms. I'm going to put it right on the board right now. But it's also on my Instagram account. So you can go to my Instagram account, Raghunath Yogi. Anybody ever want to reach me? Reach out to me on Instagram. It's like simple, at Raghunath Yogi. Watch the video, comment it on YouTube, like it. And yeah, I think a big part of growing in our own bhakti is giving bhakti to others. Why? Because people need it. At this time of life where we think we need so much to be happy, we actually need very little. What we need is spiritual life. Why? Because we're spiritual people. We're spiritual people. We need spiritual life. It's quite simple math, isn't it? Look at this guy. What am I going to do with that bunkie? You are the sunshine of my life.